You don't see many boats like this anymore. A fully opened 37-foot sports cruiser with twin stern drives, a sub 3.5 metre beam and a deep V hull. This, typically, is what Windy does best, but in the world of the modern sports cruiser, it bucks the current focus on interior volume and living spaces. It also sports a bold new look, penned by Espen Oino, the man who designed Octopus and Dilbar, amongst other super yacht heavyweights. It's not cheap. Prices start from just over £500,000 with tax, but our test boat was $563,000 with options. The question is, does the 37 Shamal possess enough windy magic to justify the cost?
You can have the 37 Shamal with a pair of 430 horsepower petrols or a pair of 400 horsepower diesels, but this one has got twin 440 horsepower diesels, combined power of 880 horsepower, a deep V hull, so I think it would be rude not to start with a launch. It may seem childish, some may say that, others would say it's good consumer advice. So we're ready to go, trimmed down, let's floor it. "20 knots already, just getting over the hump. You have the auto trim system and the Humphrey interceptors working to get the boat at a nice level running attitude. We're doing 40 knots already at 3,500 RPM. The boat is just trimming out and we're up to max RPM 3,746 knots like that. 170 litres an hour. Absolutely effortless. But it's nice to have that power on tap, but realistically you're going to spend your time back down here. If I throttle back a touch, we'll take her back to a pedestrian 30 knots, where everything calms down a bit. You're really nicely protected in this helm position. You sit nice and low, the windscreen's a good height, these side screens are a good height as well. So the wind is funneled nicely over the top of your head, and now we're doing just over 30 knots for 85 litres an hour. Drop it down to exactly 30, and yeah, 70 litres an hour. So that's giving you a range of around 280 miles. And it's very, very comfortable at this speed. The boat feels like it's hardly working at all. The engines are only spinning over at just over 2,500 RPM, and this really does feel like a very comfortable cruising speed. It's a boat that is designed around the driver. This helm station is so focused. It's quite plain, and you miss the analog dials of Windies of old because everything is in the Raymarine MFD, but there's nothing to distract you from the business of driving. This fantastic single spoke wheel. You sit nice and comfortably, whether you're bolstering like I am now. You can sit as well, and then you're even more protected by the windscreen, but you can also stand up with your head clear of the windscreen, which is nice if you're travelling a bit more slowly or if you're coming into a marina. As I said, there's very few controls really to distract you. Everything is in the MFD. If your Humphrey interceptor controls down to your right, and then the throttles are in the perfect position right under your hand. It's a really good ergonomic driving position. And the other thing to note about the 37 Shamal is that it's got twin stern drives, and when it comes to handling, you really can't do much better than that. The steering is light, but not so light as IPS. You have a bit of feel, you get a bit of feedback as you turn the boat into the corners, and there's so much grip on offer. You know, there's no steps in this hull. It's just a really well sorted deep V with twin stern drives, and it looks after you really well. It's calm where we are here in the Solent, but out by the Needles earlier there was a bit more chop around, and no matter if you land at a slightly awkward angle, which we did, the hull doesn't complain. It's really cultured, it's confidence inspiring. It just makes you want to drive it, it really does. And you quickly find yourself cruising at 35, 40 knots, no problem. You know, when you top out at 45, 46 knots, if you're really in a hurry, you can cruise at 40 knots. We'll do that now. 120 litres an hour, cruising at 40 knots, 3,000 RPM. And if I had somebody next to me on the side of the boat, I could talk to them very, very comfortably. This is a fast, capable weekender. It's designed to get you to your destination so you can enjoy it. Do it quickly, and do it even when it chops up. And you feel pretty confident that this boat can do that. Any complaints here at the helm? What I'd like, some proper cubbies to store stuff. You've got a sort of shelf here where you can put your phone and sunglasses, but it's not covered. I found myself having to put stuff in the sink because there's not really a covered locker to just chuck loose items. So they could do with a bit more of that kind of thing, but there's very little to complain about here with this Helm. And for a boat that is so open, you know, you have just the glorious blue sky above you, you feel well protected, you're not getting absolutely pummeled by the wind. If I sit, it's even better, and at this speed the running attitude is so nice and level that you're not having to peer over the bow. When you're getting onto the plane, you do lose sight a little bit, but once you get into stride over 30 knots, the running attitude is fantastic. And of course it's all being managed in the background by the Humphrey interceptors and the automatic chin system on the stern drive legs. It's not a boat that you have to think about too hard to drive, really. You set the speed with the throttles, depending on your mood, let the electronics do the rest. But you can engage with it if you want to. It's really entertaining to steer. It's almost aircraft-like, the amount of lean you get. It's instantaneous, but it's controlled. Smooth and predictable. It's a great boat to drive at high speed, it really is. And these engines are a very, very sweet match. So this latest generation of Volvo Penta DPI drives has the joystick option that you used to have with the DPHs, but it's so much slicker than it used to be. You don't get that clunking in and out of gear, the jerking from the gearbox. It's a far smoother experience. Before I'd have probably ignored the joystick, I'd have used the two throttles and the bow thruster, which you can still do on this boat. It has a bow thruster fitting, but it's actually far more usable, this joystick, and I think I would use it more than I would have done with the previous system. Yeah, you have much better fine control, and it's just so much slicker in and out of gear. Before, this would be really quite clunky, a lot of commotion. Windy and Espinoino wanted to capture some of Windy's history in the 37 Shamal, so you'll see it sort of harks back to the sports boats of the 70s and 80s. You have the slightly squarer window line, those tall shoulders, and doesn't it look fantastic just to have a completely open 37-foot sports boat? Really quite a rare beast these days. It's a striking machine, and it's been turning heads all day today during our test. But let's have a closer look on board and look at some of the details. The beam of just 3.3 metres, the 37 Shamal is quite a slender boat, but because there's no side decks, the cockpit has been allowed to extend right to the extremes of the beam, making it a good, spacious main deck area. We step on board, you have this expanse of sunbathing space back here, and then underneath here, this end cushion lifts up, and you have a locker that extends really quite a long way back. You can see there's a paddleboard in here, and cleaning equipment. That's a useful locker to store water toys, etc. Under here is your bathing ladder. We move forward. Up in this locker, you find dedicated fender storage in these nets here in quite a handy location. Of course, you have this tray here as well, so you can drape some lines in there if you need to. As we move in, you're into the real heart of the boat, and notice how it's nice and sunk down here, so it's well protected from the windscreen, not only when you're moving along but when you're at anchor, as you're going to be bowing to the wind, so hopefully the wind funnels over the windscreen, so it's nice and sheltered in this big seating area. Of course, the table folds out to make it a little bit larger. Engine access is via an electric hatch. This whole section lifts up, and then you have really excellent access to both of the engines and the machinery space. And another neat touch is that this backrest here is on rails. It locks into place, but once you've unlocked it, you can just push this and it goes right back here. So then you have a sunbathing space that is facing into the boat, or of course you can have it the other way and face out the back of the boat. Quite a nice touch, that. On this side you have the wet bar, so you can serve guests on deck. You have a sink here, there's a grill, you have a fridge down here as well. You can have an ice maker on this side, but this one's just got storage. This is quite nice. Right here you have this extra panel that pops up just to give you a little bit more preparation space around the grill for when you're cooking. If you want some protection overhead, a bit of sunshade, then the bimini, you can just see it here, lift up the engine hatch and that pops up from under there, and then it covers this area, giving a bit of shade over this section, and it's strong enough that it can be kept in place when the boat's moving along, not just for when it's stationary. And you just see the depth of these side screens means you can really hunker down at this helm station. It's nice to see these guardrails here as well. This is a windy trait, having those right next to you so you can grab onto them if you're standing at the helm, and there's also handrails built into the windscreen surround as well. It's really practical stuff, and it's a very practical helm, even down to the colour. You know, it's matte, there's no reflection, it's really clear. It could do with a bit more storage. Yes, you've got these two little cup holders here in this shelf, but really you could do with some more covered storage. There's a little bit here, but it's very shallow. We have got a charging point here, you know, a bit of shallow storage for odds and ends, but you could do with something a little bit bigger. The seats are great, they bolster, you can sit in them like that as well, but they're also in the perfect position and keep you nice and snug if you want to lean. You have two people on this side, and then you have another navigator's spot. That's really good, that's nice and sheltered as well, and then you have a bit more storage in the deck in this little spot here. Generally the Helm ergonomics are really good. I really like the switch gear down here, so for lighting and things like that, really nice tactile switches. I'd probably move the Fusion stereo head unit. It's down here, that's a bit awkward to get to. I'd probably rather see that a bit further up. You could even have it on the dash. It's not an unattractive unit, but it's just a bit awkward to get to there down by the helmsman's legs. And because you don't have side decks, your route forward is via these steps here. So you have these 3 steps, grab handholds here to help you up. Of course you have the railings on top of the windscreen as well. The windscreen flips over, and that's how you make your way forward to the anchor locker. Yeah, it might feel a little bit precarious if you're bobbing around out at sea, but actually if you're coming to a marina and handling fenders and lines, it's actually a perfectly safe way to get up and down from the foredeck. Then we move down into the interior, which Espinoino also designed, and though it's a weekender, Windy really wanted to up the level of luxury and feeling of quality down here. So note how, firstly, how nice this woodwork is, but also that all the greying lines up. You've got proper stainless steel fiddles on these tops here, really nice positive solid catches on the drawers. You have another isotherm fridge down here, so you have a little bit more cooling space, dimmable LED lighting all around, and then you have this big open plan sleeping area, this double forward here, and then amidships sliding underneath the cockpit you have another double bed. And the setup is great for a family, but if you have got guests on board, it's quite a neat trick. You just unclip this panel here from the bulkhead, and that connects magnetically to this strip, and then the people in this cabin do have some privacy, and they've got ventilation in there and a bit of natural light, but then you can very easily open it up again just by clipping this back in place. Quite a nice solution, that. And then through this door you have the bathroom, which is a surprisingly good size. Headroom, not bad. You know, I can stand upright in here, and the same in the shower cubicle, which is nice and separate. It's a bit of a wet room as well. There's no curtain, but you've got wooden floor here, so it doesn't matter if it gets wet, and a little bit more storage in here as well.
Thank you very much for watching our review of the Windy 37 Shamal. Please do click the subscribe button and also the bell icon so you get notifications every time we upload a new video.